All right, these are the 10 secrets that you can deploy into your life right now to make your stories 10 times more entertaining. So if you want amazing friendships, if you want amazing business deals, if you want people to be like, oh my God, you're the funniest person ever, if you want a hot girlfriend or a hot boyfriend, use these strategies and your life will get fantastic. So let's jump in. Number one, if you want to tell an amazing story, you have to have some structure to it. So structure is basically you paint the context, you kind of say the goal or what you were trying to accomplish, there's some obstacle in the way, and then you get around it. And if you can take this structure, you can literally make anything interesting. So it's like, let's say I was going to the store and I need some apples. I could be like, yeah, so the other day I tried to go get some apples, and like literally there were no apples left, and this was freaking me out because I didn't know how to get some, I needed some applesauce, right? So now I have context, which is I needed some apples. The goal was I had to get some apples, and the problem was something happened, so I couldn't, but I needed it because I needed applesauce, right? So it's like, oh my God, I went to the store, all this stuff happened, I couldn't get the apples, and the last second got some apples, and I finally made my applesauce, right? That's the basic structure. So when you tell stories, you have to be aware of you having a structure to the story. Too many people have no structure, they just say random things, and they lose interest. Number two, you always have to hit the what's happening next curiosity note in their mind. For example, I have a phone here, right? So I could be like, dude, this phone has something that nobody else knows about. This is the craziest thing ever. Like literally I was at the store the other day and I took out my phone and then it started flipping and I was like, oh my God, what's happening with the flip? So now in your head, you're like, okay, what the hell does the flip mean, right? You're curious about that. So when I'm telling the stories to people, I'm very aware that I'm trying to hit the, hey, where the hell is the guy going with this part of their brain? And if you can do that, you will hold attention because if they know what you're going to say, the attention goes away. So you have to basically strategically drip the information while also getting the actual information out and telling the story. All right. Number three, telling stories is not about the events that happened to you. It's about how the events made you feel, which ultimately is how do you want the person to feel when you're telling them your story? So when I'm telling a story to somebody, really all I'm thinking in my head is how do I want this person to feel when I'm telling the story, right? Is it surprise? Is it shock? Is it awe? Is it freaking out? Like, what do I want them to feel? So let's say I'm like, I want them to feel scared and, shocked. So then it's like, okay, it's like, I'll convey that in my story. So then it's like, oh my gosh, I was driving to the freaking thing the other day, and then this guy pulled out in front of me, and I was like, oh my God. So I swerved, and I didn't even think I was going to make it. But then he swerved in front of me, so I swerved back, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do here, right? So now you're with me in that story. You're like, okay, I'm freaking out with you. So start with the emotion you want them to feel in mind, and then let that convey through every little point you make in your story, okay? Now, number four, you need to take somebody's attention. It is not given freely. Too many people just tell their story without the person that they're telling the story to in mind, and they think the person is just going to give them their attention. That's not the case. How many times have people told you stories and you literally zoned out and you got bored? No attention is unearned. You have to take the attention and you have to earn it by being interesting. Number five, you have to start weighing out what is valuable in your stories and what isn't. You have to know what the punchline is. You have to know what the interesting part about it is. Too many people spend way too much time on boring, irrelevant, uninteresting parts of their stories, and then when they actually get to the interesting part, the people are already nobody's paying attention because it's already people are like checked out by that time. So you have to be very aware of, okay, what is the interesting part here? What is not relevant? Number six, you have to start adding in hooks. A hook is just like a promise. It's a grandiose statement. It's something. So if I wanted you to listen to the story, I would be like, oh my God, I learned the craziest thing about this thing the other day, right? Or so now you're like, okay, what did the guy learn? Or you're like, oh my gosh, I was in Target the other day and this insane thing happened. Now you're going to be a little more engaged, right? And that's also a good way to take somebody's attention. If you can do a hook like that, people are going to be compelled to listen because they want to know the answer. You're opening a loop in their mind. You're opening a hook in their mind. Number seven, facial expressions, hand gestures, tonality, and vocal rhythm is super important. So when it's an unimportant part of the story, you usually want to talk a little faster. If it's more important, you usually want to talk a little slower. Here's what I mean by that. And also, facial expressions are being expressive with what you're saying. So it's like I wasn't scared. I was absolutely freaked out. Look at my face. I was absolutely freaked out, right? You can see it on my face. Hand gestures. I wasn't absolutely freaked out. I was absolutely freaked out. I was super scared, right? Get a motive. Add in these things so people feel what you're saying. Tonality. I wasn't absolutely scared. I was absolutely freaking out. I I wasn't angry and mad. I was absolutely pissed. Get some tonality in there, and then also vocal rhythm. So what I'll do is if I'm telling a story and it's a point that's not too important, I'll talk a little quicker, and if it's something I need to emphasize, I will slow down and make an emphasis on what I'm saying. So here's an example. Let's say I'll use the story in the TikTok, which is like, let's say you're buying some apples and then all the apples are gone. So then you set the stage. So you're like, yeah, so I needed to get some apples because I had to make some applesauce, but then all the freaking things were gone. So basically, I'm like driving to the store, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm trying to find parking. I walk in, I do this, I do that, and then I finally see the apples. And when I'm parsing through the apples, I finally see one. So did you notice that? So basically, when I was setting the stage with me pulling up to the parking lot and doing this and doing that, I sped through that because it's not interesting. And then the actual focal point of the story with the apples, I slowed down and I put some emphasis on it. Being able to switch the rhythms of how you speak is literally going to make you so much more interesting. I can't even explain this. Because think of every boring story you've ever heard. The person is usually like, yeah, so I went to the... So no vocal tonality, no differentiating of their vocal rhythm, no hand gestures, no facial expressions. They have literally none of this on number 7. They're like, well, yeah, I went to the store and then I did this thing. And then I pulled up to the store and I needed some apples, but because I had to make applesauce. So then I went to the store and then I got the applesauce and then I made it. You're like, oh, thank you. That was literally the most boring thing I've ever heard in my freaking life, right? So facial expressions, hand gestures, tonality, and vocal rhythm, just fixing those alone will make you way more interesting than the average person. Number 8, metaphors, analogies, and emotional language. When you're telling stories, you're going to be feeling emotions, and the other person is going to be feeling emotions as well. All you want to do is start likening the emotions that you're feeling to other things. So let's say you told a story and you felt super stressed. So you're like, yep, I had this freaking paper due and it was a huge test, and if I failed, I would have failed the class. So like literally when I was studying, oh my God, I was so stressed out. I literally felt like I was laying down and there were like 30 books just stacked on my chest. It was hard to breathe. I was so stressed. But then I studied, and then when I actually passed the test, oh my goodness, it was such a relief. I felt like I just worked all day digging trenches in the rain, but then I just stepped in the shower and I was like, it was such a relieving feeling. So you can see how I'm likening the feelings to other things. It's what your brain does when you dream. Your brain has all these different images to convey the same emotion. You need to be able to do this with stories so people can not only feel what you're saying, but they can see what you're saying. So if they can see it and feel it and you're giving them the emotions that they want to feel, you're going to have much more entertaining stories. Number 9, off the cuff jokes, especially when you're serious, sound effects, and unpredictability. So you can see when I was telling that other story, I was like, oh my gosh, I was whipping here, and I was like, I was skirting around it, and then the guy came in front of me, so then I was like, and I went around it, and then I slammed the brakes, and I started running away, so I'm literally just running, and everybody's looking around me, and then I turn around, and I'm like, wait a second, that guy's super attractive. And then anyway, I was like, no, I'm not gay. And then I kept running, so like, there's a lot of things there, right? So the first one was sound effects. So I had the sound effects of me steering. I had the sound effects of me running away. Also, unpredictability. You think I'm going to say something dramatic about looking back, and it's me basically saying this guy's attractive, and then me debating in my own head that I'm not gay, right? That's just a complete tangent of the story, but it's funny, and it's unpredictable, and it makes your stories way more entertaining. So am I saying add gay jokes into your stories? I mean, you could if you want, but the point is, just be a little unpredictable with what you say. And also, especially when you're telling heavy topics, you can throw in a playful turn, and people are going to be so much more interested in what you have to say. And then number 10, lastly, live an interesting life. If you want to have amazing stories, the easiest way to get amazing, interesting stories is to actually get amazing, interesting stories. And you do that by living an interesting life. So start saying yes to things you wouldn't normally do. Start going on random adventures that you wouldn't normally do, that the normal person won't have. And if you can have stories, if you can live a life that the average person doesn't live, you will have stories that the average person won't have. And that will, by itself, make you more entertaining. So I hope this video helped. Easy ways to get more than 10 times entertaining in your stories. Hope you have a wonderful day. Peace.